Welcome back to our creative videos. I'm Loretta Hayes from Hayes Sewing Machine Company in Wilmington, Delaware. And today we're going to do a quilt that is done from the Rainbow Garden collection from Benartex. The designer is Valentina Harper, and she has done an absolutely gorgeous collection of fabric. So I thought I'd start out with showing you some of the fabrics. She has several large scale prints in this collection. So this one, the actual fabric is called Rainbow Blooms. This is a dark turquoise, and so it comes in this colorway. It comes in a black colorway, and you can see it's got the lovely flowers. And then it also has a butterflies, which rainbow butterflies is kind of the theme of her collection. It also comes in a white background, which is absolutely stunning. And then she also has it in a fuchsia background as well. So that is all one fabric. That is Rainbow Blooms. So other large scale prints, she has some butterflies only. So the same butterflies that are mixed in with the flowers on the bloom. So this one is Rainbow Butterflies, and it comes in both a white and a black background. And that's just stunningly gorgeous. Also in the larger scale prints, she has two hexagon prints. So the same kind of flowers are inside the hexagons, just a slightly smaller scale. And that comes with a white background. And it also comes in a really pretty aqua background.
They did all the appliquing for you.
Yes, they did. Absolutely. All right, what's next on the collection here? The next two pieces are ones where they are kind of line work. They would make great backgrounds and also coordinating with obviously the other ones. This one is called Garden Bliss, and it comes in the fuchsia. It comes in an orange.
That's pretty.
I always wanted to make sure she didn't call it something other than orange. It's kind of a sherbety color, so this is the aqua. And for me, because I love black and white prints, it also comes in a black and white formation there. In that same kind of blender, she's done her butterflies, but in a slightly smaller scale, so kind of a medium scale. And that also comes in the aqua. It comes in a pink. This is the light pink. I just think this is super cool.
Just zooming in a little bit.
Okay, no problem. You want
Got
me to bring it closer?
Yep, nope, we're good. All right.
So you can see the
Print.
detail now.
Yeah.
I was just thinking that this would make, just by itself, a really cute fabric for a little girl's quilt.
Oh, yeah.
How sweet would that be? And then also the orange again.
Nice.
So stunningly gorgeous there. And then the last one is called Rainbow Dots. And so it comes in a multicolor format. So how cool would this be to do like the backing of a quilt?
Yeah.
Or even just a border, because it's going to pull up all the colors. And then it's, once again, my favorite.
Black and white.
Black and white. Okay?
Gorgeous, thank you.
You know, I'm one of those, I'll wear another color other than black when they come up with something darker. All right. So those are the fabrics of the collection. She has done a free pattern, which we will link in the comments below. It is called Pixie Dust, and it is a half square triangle bonanza. So you can you see from the pattern there?
Mm-hmm.
All right, we're looking good there. And so it makes a quilt that is approximately 60 by 72, so it's a nice size. And really, it is just a great way of practicing your half square triangles. There are 3 units to this quilt. So you have a large half square triangle that's done with a 13-inch square. You have a medium half square triangle that is done with a 7-inch square. And you have a small one that is done with a 4-inch square on there. So let's go ahead and talk. We're going to actually talk about the small one because we need to join them together to create a size large enough to match there. And we'll just go ahead and do a 7-inch one because the technique would be the same on the 13. So when you go to cut out, she's going to tell you that you're going to be cutting out your squares, and she obviously tells you the appropriate number of which fabric. But you're always going to have a white square. So we have a 7-inch. I'm going to do the hexagon one. And then I've got a 7-inch white square to pair with it. And then we're going to do 4-inch ones in the fuchsia. And we have 4-inch squares there. So your first mission, should you choose to accept it, is to take and draw a line from corner to corner. So it doesn't really matter a ton what you draw with. You just want something that's not going to bleed. So this is a friction pen. This will erase when I press it, and you're going to be pressing all these blocks, so it'll go away. But you could also chalk it. You could even do something as simple as, a number 2 pencil. That would be no problem. So we would come in.
Hard to see what you're doing on white on white.
Okay, no problem. Drop that in there.
There you go.
A little contrast going
A
there.
little contrast is good. There
All
you
right,
go.
that better?
Yep.
All right, so we have drawn 3 lines. I've got 2 on the 4-inch squares, and I've got 1 on the 7-inch square. So what we're going to do is we're going to start out. We're going to be sewing with, I thought I would show you the 97D foot for the Bernina. It is a 1/4-inch foot without a guide attached to it, but with a guide that you can screw into the base. So we're going to be using a little bit of both. To start with, we are simply going to be using our without the guide. So you're going to take your squares. We're going to put the pretty side of our fabric facing up. We're going to line up our white square that we drew the line on right on top. And then we'll do the same thing.
And does
with our-
each square make 2 sets?
Yes, correct. Each square makes 2 sets. And what I thought was great is I had, Carol cut it out for me. She drew the lines on it for me, so that just took all the white ones and just took her, half an hour to draw the lines on it. So you got everything set, and then when I was ready to start sewing the sample, I literally went from one to the next to the next to the next. I did all the 4-inch squares, I did all the 7-inch squares, and I did all the 13. So it was pretty mindless for doing sewing. And as I was sewing late at night, that's probably a good thing. All right, so we're going to start. The 1/4-inch edge on the 97 foot is on the right-hand side. So we are going to run the right-hand side right down our drawn line. When we get to about 1/4 inch from the end, we're going to stop. We're going to pick up our square again, our next one, and we're going to sew that about 1/2 inch in the air from one to the next. So you'll notice I didn't pick up the presser foot. I just went and sewed from one to the next. And then we'll go ahead and stop about 1/4 inch and we'll line up the next one. So we're just working our way down. When you come to the end, we're going to go ahead and cut our thread. And then I leave them attached, flip them around, and go ahead and line up the next one. And the reason why I leave them attached, so now I'm starting from the bottom going up. is they are all set up for you. So we come in and you'll find that you're lined up for the next one. You don't have to pick them up out of a pile. So it's a really fast way of piecing a quilt. Super, super fast. All right, and we are done our pieces. Okay, once we have that there, we're gonna then take it. We're gonna just snip our threads to separate them at this point, and we're gonna cut along our line. Now, the cutting of this line does not have to be perfect. So yes, you could absolutely get the rotary ruler out and get the rotary cutter. You know, you could absolutely do that. But it is perfectly fine to go ahead and just cut down the line, because we have already sewn our 1/4 inch seam. If we don't cut perfectly on the line, it is not going to make any difference. You know, there's places where I'm really fussy, and there's places where I'm not. And this is a not.
Quilt Tech.
Yes, well, we're going to get to Quilt Tech, so. I've had comments from students in the store saying that I shamed you into quilt tacking on one of your last videos.
Yes, you did.
All right, so now we are heading over to the ironing board. You know, that's what sisters do, Pam. So.
Absolutely.
All right, so we're gonna take our half square triangle. We're gonna line it up so that the colored side of the triangle is facing away from me, so the white is facing towards me. And with the iron, we are just gonna do a light little press. Now, the urge on this is to go crazy with it, you know, really press it. And that's a great way of stretching out a half square triangle and making your beautiful square into a lovely parallelogram. So we want to kind of take it easy on the pressing, just enough to get it flat. And you'll notice I'm kind of just pressing on the seam and not really worrying too much about the points. So we'll do the same thing on the 4s. And I always press it from the pretty side. You're much less likely to get an accordion pleat that way. And a lot more of this motion for the pressing as opposed to this motion like you're ironing the shirt. All right, so we now have our units and we're heading back over to the sewing machine. So with the 7-inch squares and with the 13-inch squares, you're done. This unit is now ready to be put down onto your design wall, and you can line up your designs from there. So nothing else to do. However, on the 4-inch squares, we need to essentially make a 4-patch in order to create a block big enough to correspond with our 7-inch squares. All right, so let's lay that out. We want to have the pink, so all of the half square triangles, the pink is to always, or the color is always to the lower left. So we're doing the same thing here. We're going to lay this out just like a 4-patch, nothing exotic here. Okay, and we're going to come in, and that's going to be our block.
So lower left.
Yeah, lower left. Easy to remember. 2 L's. So at this point, I really would prefer to have a foot with a guide. So I could swap my foot, but I wanted to show you a new foot. So this is a 97 foot. And so if you have a 97, whether it be a 97D or a 97 plain, it comes with a guide with a little screw and a small screwdriver. You see those?
Yep.
Okay. So what we want to do is we want to put the presser foot down. We're going to then take the guide and we're going to slide the guide right up to the foot. Now what's really interesting, if we can see this, is that, let me put a little white behind there. There is a little niche cut out of this guide. So this guide is actually going over your feed dogs, but your feed dogs are not going to hit it because the little notch is cut out there.
Some engineer thought ahead.
No click, 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 click. All right, so we're going to line that up. We're going to put the little screw in, and you take the little screwdriver, which is perfect. Big screwdrivers are a little hard to get underneath your machine. And so you've got that nice and tight. And so we now have a 1/4-inch foot with a guide at this point. So we're going to go ahead and pick my presser foot back up. Okay, let me get that dual feed down there. Okay, and we're going to come in and we're just going to do a little bit of dog earing. So we're going to clip off our little pieces. I do that, you know, once again, I'm not fussy in certain things, but this one here, you tend to get a lot of bulk on the corners anyway, and if you dog ear it, you have less bulk.
And you have confetti.
Yes, and you have pretty confetti all over your studio. Okay, so lower left, lower left, lower left. So we're now going to take and we're going to join the 2 units together. So we'll come in, and it's just like doing a 4-patch. So nothing exotic here, very elementary block. We'll go ahead and we'll line up on the next one. And there's no seams to line up at this point. We're just lining up the edge of the block. Okey-doke. So now we need to go up and do some pressing. So what we would like is we would like the seam to go one direction on the top row and the opposite direction on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press towards that darker triangle here, but when I press on this way, I am going to be pressing towards the lighter. And that's another reason to unload the dog ears, because you're less likely to see those dog ears through the white of the fabric. So let me go ahead and press those. Pam, you don't need to come. I can.
Need a little sign. She's ironing.
Okay. So now we have them pressed. So if we flip this over, you'll see that one of them is being pressed this direction and one of them is pressed the opposite way. So just try and stay consistent with it. All right. So what we are now looking at, we would like to take and look at our half square triangle. When we sewed that 1/4-inch seam, now the tip of that triangle should be 1/4 inch from the edge of our fabric. And the same thing up here at the top. So it's 1/4 inch up to there. If it's not, super simple to just pull the seam out and restitch. Usually if it's not, there's an issue with the 1/4-inch seam allowance. We're either a little too much to the 1/4-inch, you know, maybe lending towards 3/8, or if this, typically the point goes all the way up to the edge, then we went down on our seam allowance, maybe more like 1/8 inch. So super easy to correct at that point. If it's 1/4 inch, we go on to our next piece. So what we would like to do is we'd like to flip this over. The seams are pressed opposite, so they are going to nestle. I'm going to take my thumb, I'm going to pinch where the seam is, where the point of that white triangle is, and I'm going to open her up and I'm going to check her out and see if I'm lined up. And I look like I am, but I'm always going to be doing a quilt tack for this one, because this is where I am fussy. I would like to have that point right dead on. So we'll come in and we'll open her up, and that is pretty darn good.
Yep, looks good.
Okay. So here's the great thing. Because of the quilt tack, I didn't have to, if it was off, I didn't have to seam ripper the entire seam. So now we're going to take a look at our block, and we're going to look at the sides. So I'm going to be sewing the seam. I'll be sewing right through the quilt tack. But if you take a look on this end of my block, I have about a 1/16 of an extra inch of fabric going there, and I have about the same on the other side. Okay, so it'll happen. You know, you could sew perfectly a 1/4 of an inch. You could, you could do all the steps right, and even just in the pressing, you can take it off a little bit off of that 1/4 inch seam. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the big on the bottom rule. So we're going to take and we're going to put the larger fabric on the bottom. And so if I line up the edges, can you see in the camera, Pam, the little bulge? Yeah, the little pooch, what I call the pooch. So we're going to put that on the bottom. Remember that somebody's going to be in charge, and it's going to be us. It's not going to be the quilt. So we're going to line those edges up. We're going to stitch across, stitch right through our quilt tack, and then I'm going to come in and I'm going to line up those bottom ones. And then we'll go ahead and stitch, and I'm just running the edge of the fabric along the edge of our guide. And there we go. And let's give this a press. All right, and let's talk about what we're looking for. So when our block is done, I would like to make sure that my seam here is visually looking like it's one continuous piece. My seam here is looking like it's one continuous, and my seam there is looking at this. Now, the other thing that I'm looking at is over here on the edges, the tips of my triangles should be really close to a 1/4 of an inch. Doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to be pretty close. If you have a triangle that's going out to the edge, then when you sew that 1/4 inch seam, you're going to chop off the point of that triangle on there. And once again, if there's an issue with that, it's usually in the seam that you're seaming here, so you flip it around, check out your seam allowances, and then go back and correct those. So easy little corrections for these little half square triangles. At this point, we would then go ahead and lay out our piece. And let me show you in the pattern, because she did an incredible job on setting this up. So when you take a look on the second page, it will tell you when you're doing the quilt assembly, it says to sew the green arrows first, the blue arrows second, and the red arrows third. So that makes sense. Green means go. Okay, blue is kind of in the middle there. Red means stop. All right, so green first.
Say, what traffic lights do you see?
All right, so when you're looking at the rows, when we're laying them out, you'll see that it's going to start out, it's going to show you the fabrics in their actual style, and it also gives you a letter for the blocks that she gives you earlier. So on row number 1, we're going to have 3 of the 13-inch triangles, the half square triangles. We're going to have 5 of the 7-inch ones, and we're going to have 1 of the 4-inch ones. And it's set up color-wise. And so green arrows first. So we are going to join these 3 triangles together. And when we press them, we're going to press them in the direction of the green arrows. So she's figured out the pressing for you. Then we're going to join our second row of half square triangles. Once again, green arrows. And this time we're going to press them that direction. So blue is the next color. So once we have those 2 rows together, we're going to join them together here. So I would do a quilt tack here and here just to make sure that I'm lined up nicely. And I would sew those. And then at that point, we're going to join a 13 square, half square. You're going to then press that seam allowance towards the smaller ones. And the other 2, you're going to press them towards the outside of the block. So the arrows not only tell you what order, but they also tell you what direction you should be pressing your seam allowances. So there are row 1, 2, and 4 and 5 are pretty much the same kind of layout. They're a mirror image of things. When you come into the center, there is kind of 3 rows going along. So when you start out, you do your green ones, so you're attaching the smaller ones. These 2 here get attached, and you attach them to the big block here, and then these all kind of go together as a group, and then you put those on the end. So follow the arrows. Pam says, yeah, that was simple. Remember, green is first, green is first, blue is second, and red is third. But the layout is really cool. When you look at this, when I first looked at this, I was like laying out each and every one of them by the diagram. But can we flip around and look at the quilt? So what you see is as you're going across on the diagonal as a nice little check, you will see that they alternate. So here is the white background hexagon, and as we go across this row, it's going to alternate between the aqua, the hexagon, and the aqua going all the way down. When you go to the next row, you're going to have the 4 square in orange, and then we're going to have the black butterflies, and they're going to alternate going as you go down the row. And then it continues on. So it's a nice check. You can use the diagram to set yourself up, but before you start sewing together, take a look at those diagonals, and they should be alternating blocks as they go through on there. So I hope you enjoyed this particular pattern. It was a lot of fun to sew together. It was very fast. I did it in like 2 evenings, so not a long project to do. But it's a really great way of practicing those half square triangles because, man, when you're done those half square triangles on this one, you've got it down. So we will see you next time.